Today, we're looking at 10, and I mean amazing, PlayStation 1 hidden gems. Some of these are ridiculously obscure and expensive, but they are well worth your time. Life hack, you need to be getting yourself some Japanese copies of these games. In fact, some are Japanese release only, and you can get them for a fraction of the cost. Spoiler alert, Police Noughts was one that I purchased recently, and I got this for £15 on eBay. I'm going to tell you exactly how you can play this in English. It's quite simple actually, because it's got English subtitles. So I've spoiled one game for you, but let's find out what the rest are. Einheim is amazing. We're starting big. This is a scrolling shoot 'em up game with a kind of 2D, 2.5 and 3D effect. This is a game like no other shooter. Not only is the music absolutely phenomenal, but there's this weird shift of the parallax scrolling in the background and the colour palette that just looks amazing. Not to mention, I'm perhaps a little bit biased because I wasn't too bad at this game, and typically with these kinds of games, these shmups, I'm absolutely terrible. Now, this was released in North America and in Japan, so unfortunately here in the good old European PAL territories, we can't get our own copy. But if you do manage to get a copy, it can be quite costly. Look here how the game just shifts to almost like an isometric view. That's the kind of thing that really makes Einheim stand out. It's gorgeous. Now, in terms of gameplay mechanics, you have this automatic cannon that you literally just hold the button in and it just shoots automatically. But you can just see underneath that you have this pivoting arm, and that is crucial to your power-ups because you can kill enemies and physically collect the weapons that are on there. You can collect the cannon, you can collect all different kinds of things, and then it attaches to your arm so you can basically power up your ship. So we know that there's gorgeous crisp visuals on top of a bright popping colour palette and parallax scrolling, but what about the sound? I'd like to say I know what you're thinking, but I'm not. But I'm telling you what I think. I think it sounds phenomenal. The beat really adds to that tension, it's fast, as is the gameplay, everything seems to marry up here. And of course at the end of the level you do get this like different bosses. Again, you need to be hot on your heels because it can become very, very difficult. But of course, shmup games are about agility. This is probably my favourite personal game on the list, but you might differ. So let's check out the other 9 games that we have to show you today in this gorgeous hidden gems list. I need a few seconds of your time to tell you about channel memberships. If you guys want to become a channel member, click join from the main page or the second link in the description. There are 3 tiers, all with different perks for you if you want to become a team member. Thanks for your time. Let's continue with the video. From opening awesome cinematics to the gorgeous top-down pixel art of Alundra, we're heading into 1997 now, and as this guy pointed out in Metacritic, 1997 was a phenomenal year for video games. For me, the appeal is with The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. I love the top-down RPG kind of game anyway, and it's hard for me to not make that comparison. Of course, I grew up with Link to the Past, so when I discovered Alundra in my adult years, I felt incredibly compelled to buy a copy. There's also a sequel as well. This game does not hold your hand. It can be very difficult in places, and it can be very top-heavy with text and dialogue. So what I would say is this: if you want a PlayStation 1 hidden gem that is going to give you hours upon hours of gameplay and you are very much driven by the story, I think you're going to like Alundra. Of course, it's going to help if you do like the RPG kind of Link to the Past mechanics as well. So definitely give some time to this in 2023 and beyond. You will not be disappointed. aside from the shambolic colonial marines, Alien games have always done a phenomenal job at capturing the atmosphere that we all know from the original films, of course. The feelings of claustrophobia, dark corridors, jump scares, everything has always been there, aside from colonial marines. So we're diving into Alien Resurrection now. This is probably one of the cheaper hidden gems on this list. Now, straight off the bat, you'll see that my controls look very janky in my gameplay. So I need to resort to using Kawaii Games gameplay. Go and subscribe to him, he has phenomenal content. So with much better gameplay locked in than my terrible efforts, I want to say this. Alien Resurrection was quite unique in its control systems. It was one of the very few PlayStation 1 first-person shooters that you are able to use the PlayStation mouse. In addition, this game honed in on the analog stick, so it was a twin-stick shooter, and it was kind of like similar controls as to what we have today when we play first-person shooters. So if you're going to play this, bear that in mind. If you dive into the instruction manual, you will see more in-depth details about the controls. If you manage to master the controls, this is an incredible game. I played this a lot as a kid, way before analog sticks were ever a thing, and I seem to have a great time with it. Going back to it now though, I was absolutely shocking. I think the graphics look really, really nice, and for me this game shines in its sound. Of course, you've got the heartbeat monitor, the clanking of the footsteps on the metal beneath us. It really does feel great. Now, thankfully, this does not really follow the film Alien Resurrection as much, but you will notice some scenes like the underwater scene. You know, there's little bits of things that marry together with this game. We don't talk about Alien Resurrection as much as we should do, of course. It seems like it was eclipsed with the fantastic Alien trilogy, but don't miss this one up. It's a full 3D environment, incredibly rewarding experience if you like your horror, your survival horror. And of course, you can dive into this again with different control methods that might alleviate the jankiness of using a non-analog pad. So you need to grab a copy of this. It's fairly cheap by today's standards, and it's one not to be missed. Castlevania Chronicles can be chronically overlooked, if you ask me. It features two games, the first of which is what's called Original Mode. This is actually an unreleased port from the 1993 Japanese release of Castlevania for the obscure Sharp X68000. Yes, it's a new one on me too, one that I certainly don't have in my collection. But this game here is an actual port of that game. It never saw the light of day in the West, so it's really nice and unique to be able to experience that on Castlevania Chronicles. And of course, we have another game bundled in with the Chronicles release. It is an upscaled version, upscaled in terms of visuals and in terms of sound, which is a little bit more sleek. But if you ask me, playing this original version just has something incredibly special about it. So you heard there the difference in the music and the sound. Of course, Arrange Mode does have that much more modern sound. In terms of visuals, there's not a massive amount in it based on the screens you're seeing, but I can assure you during gameplay testing, the original just pipped it for me. I can't really explain the difference in as much as the Arrange Mode. It clearly does look better. I preferred the lure of the remake of the Sharp X68000 version. So it's over to you. I can say this, you need to buy yourselves a copy of this before it starts to steep in price. I picked my copy up for about £85 a couple of years ago, and I am seeing it more and more at the retro gaming markets. So if you've got about £100 to spare, you need to get this, guys.
His way, winter will arrive a little early this year.
Herc's Adventure. Choose between 3 heroes to navigate your level. Every character has a different ability, and every character is equally as fun as the other. If you've played Zombies Ate My Neighbours, you'll have a bit of a flavour for the kind of game that this is. There's lots of comedy involved in this, and there's almost like this really cool cel-shaded effect of the backgrounds as well. This is a game that took me by surprise, probably the most surprise I had making this entire video. Surprise because it was one that I would have overlooked. But this game is something special. Graphically, it holds up really well by today's standards. Humour, you can have loads of fun. You can also play 2-player as well. Now, like I said, the different characters have different abilities, but they do share the same in that you can throw these spears at enemies, you can pick up sheep, you can pick up skeletons, you can use the enemies as a weapon against other enemies. You've got to reach different aspects of the level by collecting keys, opening doors. It's really, really, really good.
Ouch! Ouch!
Now, one could argue that it's so good, it's ridiculously expensive on eBay. If you hop over there now, you'll see this also available for the Sega Saturn with an equally high price tag of over 200 smackers. That's right, over £200. So I'll leave that one with you. I recommend this game. I recommend you play this game. You need to check it out. If you've got a spare few £100 floating about, this is definitely one that I think will bolster out and appeal to the collectors that watch this episode. Stalker Full Metal 4th was another Japanese exclusive, and believe it or not, the PlayStation 1 version came out much later in the lifespan because this was initially released in 1994, and we've already mentioned the X68000 because it was released for that, as well as the very obscure FM Towns, but thankfully it came to the PlayStation 1. Now, if you like Streets of Rage, I think you'll like this, because this is essentially Streets of Rage but with mechs. The graphics look absolutely gorgeous, the sound is absolutely tremendous, and believe it or not, I felt wickedly powerful. I was actually pretty good at this game. I really liked the way the camera zoomed in and out depending on how heavy the battle was, or if you were jumping or not. You can see that kind of slight pop out with the camera there. The backgrounds were really interesting and seemed to pay a lot of attention to detail. You've got your little overdrive meter in the bottom left corner. Of course, you can build up that gauge by just kicking ass as you fly through these amazing levels. Additionally, this was released later down the line, much later on the Sega Mega Drive by Strictly Limited, and there were very, very few copies in circulation, so I think, again, to the collectors out there, that might be one that you want to hone in on, because this was a Japanese exclusive for the PlayStation 1, and it can cost you a pretty penny. Policenauts is probably the most niche game on here, and it's only going to appeal to a select few. This is dubbed as the Snatcher spiritual successor, and you'll see why, because this is a Hideo Kojima game. It is arguably a masterpiece. It is a visual novel type game, point and click, that you really need to sink a lot of time into. Being a Hideo Kojima game, you can expect lots of story, lots of dialogue, all of it of which is completely unskippable. This, like Alundra, is one that you really need to sit down, play and sink some time into. I recently scored a copy from eBay for £19. It was a Japanese exclusive only, but thankfully you have English subtitles as native.
30年前、スペースコロニーのビヨンドコーストでポリスノーツとして働いていた。もっとも、エンプス事故
Pretty cool that they included that. So for me, this is a hard game not to buy. It's a hard game to shy away from. There was even a feature on the Sega Saturn whereby you could use the light gun, but unfortunately this wasn't implemented on the PlayStation 1. If you like your cyberpunk kind of stuff, if you're very much into Japanese culture, and if you definitely like Snatcher, I think Policenauts definitely needs some of your time. It's a work of art. It's Kojima. It oozes charm. And again, it's for the niche player. As you're navigating around your point-and-click world, you will not move on or trigger the next kind of cutscene or part of the game until you've done absolutely everything that the game demands. And that's why it requires patience, that's why it requires time, that's why it's niche, and that is why it's unique. So there's plenty of copies on eBay. Again, if you get the Japanese version, you have a PlayStation 1 that is region free like I do, you can play this and enjoy it just as if it was released in over in here in Europe.
今日は運がいい。こんな早い時間に客が来るとは。どうぞ。鍵はかかっていない。
ジョナサン、久しぶり。
Looking at this, you might think Racing Lagoon is a racing game. It's not. This is an incredibly unique racing RPG. It was a Japanese exclusive, and my footage here was all in Japanese. But it wasn't until I believe 2021 that it got an English patched translation by a Canadian translator. So this is now available to play in full English so you can soak up the dialogue and really get into the uniqueness of this game. By driving standards, it looks pretty fantastic. You can race in first or third person, and you have to drive around the city collecting different missions, which all give you XP, which enables you to level up your car. Again, very much along the same vein as a role-playing game. You battle, gain XP and level up your character, but in this your car is your character, and that's made pretty clear right throughout the game, and that's what makes Racing Lagoon incredibly unique. Now commercially this game flopped. I believe it sold just over 140,000 copies, and it was released just after Square's massively famous Final Fantasy VII, which of course we know sold absolutely millions. So this game was a commercial flop, but it's certainly not a cultural flop because of its uniqueness, and again you can all enjoy it now in English, thank you to the English patch translation from a few years ago. Next up we've got Skull Monkeys. This is a one-player platform game, and we get to kind of have a little bit of a Rayman experience with a definitely dampened colour palette in comparison. You need to navigate the levels, and it's really gorgeously rewarding to see the fore, mid and background as you progress. You collect these weird looking ball things, and if you collect 100 you get an extra life, but it's very difficult. It can be very difficult to navigate the jump and time it just right to land on these weird skull monkey things. They make noises like this. So what appeals to me is this kind of Abe's Odyssey meets Rayman meets its own unique style of graphical ability. If you want a new challenge and something that looks and sounds pretty darn decent in 2023, Skull Monkeys is definitely going to be a game you are going to be checking out.
Ready to go?
Buckle up for Jumping Flash. This is a very unique and eclectic first-person shooter game. It's not so much as a first-person shooter game as there's lots of other things to do. Killing, of course, is one of them, and collecting items to be able to progress to the exit. You play as this rabbit-robbit thing, I don't really know, but I loved this game back in the day. We played the hell out of this and rented this so many times from Blockbuster. You can triple jump, which gives you the ability to get extremely high, to get onto different platforms of this multi-leveled level. It really does pack a punch, and I'm telling you now, not many people talk about jumping flash. Not many people do, but they should. So check it out. This is a really fun game that I guarantee you'll enjoy if you like bright games, if you like just cool sounding games, and if you like the Japanese kind of looking games, Jumping Flash is going to add a lot of value. 10 really cool hidden gems. Einheim for me is an absolute banger. If you look on some of the Japanese auction sites, you can pick that up for about 10 quid. If you look on UK eBay, it's between 30 and 50, so definitely head over to your Japanese auction sites and pick yourselves up a copy of Einheim. Of course, we've got Snatcher, the spiritual successor, which is Police Noughts to Snatcher, so that is really cool too. Overall, I think this was an incredible episode. So I'm going to hand over to you. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Please subscribe. 10 years on the platform almost, and we are rapidly approaching 70k, so it's a massive thank you, and leave a like rating. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.